4 years, 1 month, and 14 days. No call on my birthday, no message at Christmas, not even a text the morning I buried my younger brother in the November ground at Beechwood Cemetery. The man who used to drive her to ringette practice every Saturday at 6 in the morning without a single complaint. 4 years of that kind of quiet, and I had made my peace with it. Or I'd told myself I had. Then my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter at 20 past 11 on a Tuesday night, and every wall I thought I'd built came down in about 3 seconds. I didn't recognize the number at first, but I recognized who was behind it before I even unlocked the screen. You don't forget your own daughter, even when she changes her number. Something in you just knows. My hand was shaking when I picked that phone up. Not from anger, from something worse, hope. I read the message twice before the words settled into me. Dad, I saw what you posted on Facebook. We should talk. Brendan has an opportunity that would be perfect for you. Meet us at Highs on Friday at 7. Bring $200,000 or don't bother showing up. I sat down at the same kitchen table where I used to help her with her grade 6 science fair project, and I just sat there. That was it. No, I've missed you. No, how have you been? No acknowledgement of 4 years of absolute silence. Just a number, a restaurant, and a condition. A price tag on my own child. Welcome to Dad's Fierce Revenge. Get comfortable. This one's going to take you somewhere. Hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're listening from. I read every single one. Most men would have put that phone face down and poured themselves something strong. Part of me wanted to. But there's another part that lives in every father, the stubborn, foolish, never quite dead part, that makes you stand in hospital waiting rooms at 3 in the morning and drive through blizzards to get to a school play. And that part whispered something different. Maybe this is it, as ugly as it looks. I didn't answer that night. I couldn't bring myself to. I was afraid that if I called her, she'd hang up before I could say anything worth saying. So I left the phone on the counter and drifted through my own house, like a man checking that everything was still where he'd left it. Down the hall where I'd tracked her height in pencil on the doorframe every year until she was 14 and told me it was embarrassing. She was right, it probably was. Past the kitchen where I'd taught her to make butter tarts from scratch, both of us with flour on our forearms, the radio on something old and country that she always claimed to hate but hummed along to without noticing. I stopped outside her old bedroom door. Closed for 4 years, I didn't open it that night. I just set my palm flat against the wood and let myself remember. She was 26 the last time I saw her, standing in my living room, voice raised, telling me I'd never supported her, never believed in her, never given her what she needed. I had refused to co-sign a personal loan for her boyfriend's newest venture, the third such venture in 2 years, each one more vague than the last. And that, apparently, was evidence of a pattern stretching back to her childhood. Why did you even bother having me if you weren't going to be there? She said. I am here, I told her. I've always been here. She didn't answer that. She just picked up her bag and left. She didn't even slam the door, which was somehow worse, like I wasn't worth the energy, and then nothing. 4 years, 1 month, and 14 days of nothing. I went back to the kitchen, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, read that message out loud one more time, just to hear how it sounded in my own voice at midnight in my own house. Bring $200,000 or don't bother showing up. 29 years I raised that girl. Coached her minor hockey team in the cold arenas outside Canada when she was 9. Drove 4 hours each way to her university orientations. Paid for her tuition, her first car, the speeding ticket she got 3 weeks after she got the car, the dental work her benefits didn't cover when she was first starting out. And this is where we landed. A table with a cover charge. I should tell you about her mother, because none of this happened without history behind it. My ex-wife and I separated 11 years ago. Polite enough on paper, corrosive enough underneath the surface, the way these things usually go. She got the house. I got out with my RRSP and my dignity and not much else. Over the years that followed, she had started framing me to our daughter in a particular way. Nothing provable. Nothing that showed up in writing. Just steady, patient repetition. Your father was always tight. Your father never put us first. Your father has more than he lets on, believe me. 6 years of that dripping into the ear of a girl who already felt abandoned by the fact of the separation itself. My ex-wife hadn't turned my daughter against me out of cruelty. Exactly. She'd turned her into someone who saw me as a withheld resource, and she'd done it so gradually that I'm not sure even my daughter noticed it happening. I waited a full day before I replied, and when I did, I told her I'd be there. But I want to be clear about what came next, because people make assumptions. I didn't hire anyone. I wasn't setting a trap. I was just a father who wanted to know the basic facts about the man who apparently had enough influence over his daughter to appear in a midnight demand for $200,000. His name was Brendan. She'd mentioned him once during the single brief phone call we had to arrange the logistics, described him as a real estate development associate at a boutique investment firm, downtown Ottawa. Smart, she said, ambitious, going places. So that Wednesday evening, I sat down at my laptop with a coffee and I looked him up. I told myself I was just being thorough. Any parent would do the same. The firm's website looked sharp, clean layout, renderings of gleaming condominium towers, headshots of Brendan in a charcoal suit, shaking hands with men at what appeared to be a charity gala. It looked credible. I thought, maybe I'm going to feel like an idiot for worrying. Maybe she's actually found someone solid this time. Then I found the first crack. A civil lawsuit filed 19 months ago. Settled quietly, no details released. In my line of work, I ran a mechanical contracting company for 32 years, commercial and industrial, mostly in the National Capital Region. When a part comes back with a settlement attached to it and no explanation, you don't move on. You trace it back because a small defect under pressure will always become a larger failure. I kept pulling. A second complaint, this one with the Real Estate Council of Ontario, a third from a former business associate in Gloucester who had provided a written statement claiming the firm misrepresented projected returns on pre-construction units to investors. I pulled the corporate registration. The firm's listed address was a postal box on Spark Street. The two named partners on the website, listed with credentials and headshots, did not appear in any Ontario business registry I could access. They weren't on LinkedIn. They weren't in any regulatory database. They were stock photographs in suits attached to a domain name. I pushed back from my desk and sat there for a moment in the kitchen light. By Thursday night, I had the rest of it. The Ontario Securities Commission had opened a preliminary inquiry into the firm 4 weeks earlier. An emergency account freezing order had been placed on the firm's primary operating account. Tax liens from the CRA went back 2 years. A development project in Barrie, 54 units, pre-sold to investors at premium prices, had never broken ground. The site was still an empty lot behind a chain-link fence. Former clients were surfacing in online forums, describing money they'd put into what they were told were low-risk pre-construction investment vehicles that had simply gone quiet. No returns, no communication, no refunds. This was not a man thriving in real estate. This was a man running a scheme on borrowed time, plugging gaps with new money, while older investors waited on returns that were never going to arrive, looking for a fresh and private source of capital before the whole structure came apart. And the fresh source of capital had appeared on his radar in the form of a Facebook post. A retirement gift I'd bought myself after 3 decades of 60-hour weeks, photographed in my driveway, tagged with my city. The $200,000 wasn't a business opportunity. It was a rescue line. He needed clean liquid cash, fast, to create the appearance of solvency before the OSC inquiry widened, and whatever accounts he still had access to were frozen solid. And my daughter, whether she understood this or not, and I genuinely didn't know which was worse, had been the avenue he'd chosen to reach me. I printed everything. The filings, the complaint records, the OSC notice, the CRA liens, the forum posts with dates and dollar amounts. I put it all in a manila folder, the same kind I'd used for 3 decades to file equipment service records in the shop. I sat at my kitchen table with that folder in front of me for a long time. A part of me wanted to call the RCMP right then. Another part wanted to call her and read the whole thing to her over the phone, all of it, every page, every dollar amount, every name. I didn't do either. My plan was simpler. Go to that dinner. Show her the truth, calmly, one father to one daughter, the way you show someone a danger they can't see because they're standing too close to it. And maybe, through the proof and the quiet and the act of showing up after 4 years of silence, find my way back to being her dad. I didn't know yet how hard she was going to make that. Friday arrived before I was ready for it. I dressed the way I always dress when something matters. Dark slacks, the dark gray blazers I've had since my nephew's wedding, the one my ex-wife always said made me look like a retired school principal. I didn't mind. I wasn't going there to impress anyone. I was going there to look my daughter in the face for the first time in 4 years. The rain had been falling all week, the soft, relentless kind of October rain that seeps into everything in Ottawa, and the drive down Elgin Street felt longer than it had any right to. Wipers on low, radio off. I wanted silence. I needed to think. Highs sits in a corner of downtown that communicates money without needing to say it. Dark walnut paneling, warm light, servers who've probably been there longer than most of the guests. I've eaten there 3 times in my life, always for something that mattered. This mattered more than all 3 of those times combined. I saw them before they saw me. My daughter was in a corner booth in a dress that probably cost more than I used to pay my best tradesman per week. Her eyes were on her phone, scrolling, her thumb moving fast, like she was already bored with whatever came before me. Beside her sat the man I recognized from a website headshot, Brendan. Dark hair combed back, expensive suit, the kind of smile that lands in the lower half of the face and doesn't quite reach the eyes. He saw me first. He smiled. I sat down. My daughter looked up. "You came," she said, like it was a surprise, like part of her had maybe hoped I'd save everyone the trouble. 4 years of silence, and that was the greeting. I said I would be here, I said, and I kept my voice as easy and level as I could. The first 10 minutes were about as comfortable as a dental appointment. Brendan did most of the talking. My daughter worked through a glass of wine that the menu would have told me cost somewhere north of $40. Brendan asked about my background with the tone of a man confirming what he already assumed. Mechanical contracting, I said. HVAC and industrial fit-out, 32 years. Right. Good solid work. He said solid the way people say it when they mean limited. I actually work with a few companies in the trades sector, smaller operators. Not quite the investment bracket I usually run in, but good people. He was patronizing me at my daughter's table. She didn't correct him. She didn't say a word in my direction. She took another sip of wine and glanced at her phone like this was all perfectly routine. Like watching a stranger talk down to her father over dinner was just part of a Friday evening. "Dad," she said after a few minutes, setting down her glass, "we have something specific to discuss. We didn't come here to reminisce." There it was. She reached into her bag, pulled out a printed document, and slid it across the tablecloth toward me like she was closing a transaction. Brendan leaned in. His voice shifted into something warmer, more reasonable, the register of a man who's explained these terms before. "Look, we know things have been strained between you and your daughter for a while. She's prepared to move past that, to bring you back in. What we're proposing is a founding investor position in a mixed-use pre-construction development in the Kanata corridor. Strong location, solid projected returns. All we need is $200,000, transferred to the account on page 3 by Monday morning. In exchange, you get to be part of your daughter's life going forward. You get to walk her down the aisle." He said you get to walk her down the aisle like it was a product feature. I looked at my daughter. I waited for her to flinch, to say, "That's not quite what I meant, Dad," to offer me something that wasn't packaged and priced. She didn't. She watched me with an expression that was patient and cool and familiar in a way that made something go cold inside me. Her mother's eyes in her face. "Think of it as an advance," she said. "Flat, businesslike. Reading off a list, you drive a truck worth close to that. Don't tell me you don't have access to it. This is your responsibility as my father." Responsibility. 29 years, and that was the word she'd landed on. Not love, not family, responsibility. Like I was a contractor behind on an invoice. Somewhere behind us, someone was playing piano. Something soft and entirely mismatched to what was happening at our table. I could hear my own heartbeat underneath it. Slow, steady, deliberate. I kept my face still. Everything I had went into keeping my face still. Because inside, something that had been holding on by a thread for 4 years and 1 month and 14 days finally quietly let go. They hadn't invited me back, they had sold me a seat, and they expected me to be grateful for the price. I didn't raise my voice. I've never raised my voice when it mattered most. The shop taught me that. I set both hands flat on the table and looked directly past Brendan, through him, and fixed my eyes on my daughter. "I need Brendan to step away from the table for 5 minutes," I said. "Just you and me. There's something in this folder I have to show you. Please." She looked at him. He crossed his arms, leaned back in his chair. "Anything you want to say to your daughter," he said, "you can say in front of her fiancé." I didn't look at him. I wouldn't give him that. "Please," I said to her again, keeping my eyes on hers. 5 minutes. This is not about the money." Something crossed her face. Not warmth, not that. Something closer to irritation, like I was the problem at this table. "No, Dad," she said, and the couple at the next table glanced over. "Say what you have to say, right here. Brendan and I are a team. Stop trying to divide us." A team? I was the opposing side. "Are you going to help me the way a father is supposed to?" she said. Colder now. "Or are you just going to waste our time again?" Again. As though showing up after 4 years of silence on her terms at a restaurant in the rain, I was still somehow the one who kept falling short. I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her, past the dress, past the wine, past the ring on her hand that a man had bought with other people's retirement savings. I saw the same person who had stood in my living room 4 years ago and asked me why I'd brought her into the world if I wasn't going to take care of her. She didn't want a father. She wanted a mark, and she was perfectly comfortable with that, sitting there under those warm lights like it was nothing at all. I pushed the pen back across the tablecloth. I reached down, picked up the manila folder from my lap, and placed it in the center of the table, right between the wine glasses and that agreement with my name on a signature line. Everything you need to know about who you're marrying is in that folder, I said, the same voice I'd used in the shop when a new hire was about to touch a machine that could take his hand off. Quiet, steady, clear. 4 years ago, you stood in my living room and asked me why I'd had you if I wasn't going to be there for you. Tonight I drove across this city after 4 years of nothing, in the rain, because I wanted to protect you from the worst decision of your life, and you won't give me 5 minutes to be your father. I looked at Brendan then, just long enough, just to hold his eyes for a second. I'm not signing anything, I said. I'm not transferring a single dollar. Nobody spoke, the piano kept playing, soft, unhurried, completely wrong for the moment. I reached into my jacket, 250s, set them beside my untouched water glass. I stood up, buttoned my blazer the way I've always done before walking into something that matters, and I said goodnight to my daughter. And I walked out. I didn't look back. I sat in my truck for a long time before I turned the key, hands on the wheel, engine off, rain on the windshield. I hadn't run. I want to be very clear about that. I had walked away from who she had chosen to become. It felt different. It was different. The drive home along the parkway was quiet. I didn't sleep much. Saturday, I raked leaves in the back garden that didn't need raking yet, just to give my hands something to do. Sunday, I went to church and said a prayer I wasn't entirely certain I believed in. For a daughter, I wasn't entirely certain still existed the way I remembered her. Came home to a house that felt about 10 times its actual size. She didn't call. I didn't call. Monday evening, I was in the living room with the news on low, more background noise than anything else, just to fill the quiet, when the anchor's voice changed. That small lift reporters get when a story has real teeth in it. Breaking tonight, she said. Federal investigators working alongside the Ontario Securities Commission have arrested an Ottawa area investment broker on charges of fraud over $5,000, breach of trust, and money laundering. Sources indicate the arrest took place this afternoon at the suspect's engagement party at a Byward Market event venue in front of approximately 70 guests. I set down the newspaper very slowly. The footage cut to shaky phone video, party lighting, a string quartet sitting motionless with their bows across their laps, mid-song. White flowers everywhere, the kind of space you book when you're spending money you haven't actually earned. And there was my daughter in a white dress, laughing at something near the bar, completely unaware that her world was going to collapse in the next 30 seconds. 2 men in dark coats came through a side door, unhurried. The way people move when they already know exactly how everything ends. I watched my daughter's face go through 4 separate expressions in about 5 seconds. Confusion, blankness, horror, and something raw and genuine that can't be faked for a camera. They put Brendan in handcuffs right there in front of all those people, read him his rights while the musicians sat frozen and the guests stood very still, and led him out through the same door they'd come in. And as he passed her, my daughter said something into the video that 2 or 3 phones caught at once. Someone did this. Someone set him up. I turned the television off, sat in the dark for a while. The fridge hummed in the kitchen. Nothing else moved. I won't pretend I felt good. I'm telling you honestly, because it would be easy to say I felt righteous or satisfied or like something had finally been corrected. I didn't feel any of those things. I felt tired. I felt a sadness that sat in my chest like a stone that's been there long enough to become part of the landscape. And underneath all of that, something smaller. Something I hadn't let myself feel in 4 years and 1 month and 14 days. Something like being free. I made tea I didn't want, and I waited because I already knew what was coming. Brendan was gone. The engagement was gone. The story she'd been living inside for the past 2 years had just been taken apart live on the local news for anyone with a cable subscription to see. And when everything a person has built collapses at once, they don't reach for a stranger. They reach for whoever's left. I was the only one left. The knock came 2 days later, Wednesday evening, not a polite knock, the sound of someone putting both hands into it, and then her voice through the door breaking apart word by word. Dad, please open the door, I need you. I put down my mug and walked to the front door slowly. I needed those few extra steps to be ready for whatever was on the other side. I opened it. She was still wearing the white dress from the engagement party, creased now, exhausted looking, one strap slipping off her shoulder like she hadn't managed to change in 2 days. Mascara dried in dark tracks down both cheeks. Eyes so swollen they'd taken on that particular quality you only see when someone's been crying long enough that their body runs out of what it needs to keep going. Dad, she said, and her voice gave out on the single syllable. Everything is gone. He's in custody. The venue refunded everything and sent it to the OSC. The money I put in, it's gone. Why didn't you stop him? I stood there and let every word of that reach me. She was looking for somewhere to put the blame, someone to be furious at, someone to fix what couldn't be fixed by anyone except her, and standing at my own front door on a Wednesday night in October, I understood that she still didn't see it. Not yet. Not even slightly. I stepped out onto the porch instead of stepping aside to let her in, and I pulled the door mostly closed behind me. I sat 3 feet away from you at that restaurant, I said. My voice was quiet and even. The voice I used in the shop when something had gone wrong and someone needed to hear the truth without panic. I asked for 5 minutes. I had everything in that folder, the complaints, the OSC filing, the CRA liens, all of it. I asked you as your father to give me 5 minutes to show you. And you told me I wasn't worth 5 minutes of your time unless I came with a certified check. She was crying harder now. I didn't know he was a criminal. He lied to me. I know he lied to you, I said. That's exactly why I drove across this city to show you the truth. It was all there. But you chose him over that conversation. You have to carry that choice now. What am I supposed to do? She said, and the last word broke apart into something barely recognizable as sound. She was looking at me like I could wave a hand and reassemble everything. Like I hadn't already tried to do exactly that 3 days earlier, with a folder on a white tablecloth and $100 left beside a glass of water I never touched. I let the silence hold for a moment. I needed her to actually hear what came next, not just survive it while she waited for me to stop talking. I will pay for a therapist, I said. A good one. And I'll make sure you have groceries and your essential bills covered, because I'm your father and I love you, and that does not stop just because you hurt me. But the lifestyle, the expectations, the idea that my savings account is something you're owed, that ends now. You have to build your own life from here. She started to form an argument. I could see it taking shape. Another angle, another way to route this back to something I'd failed to do, something I owed her. I let her get about 2 words out before I spoke again, and this time I was quieter because underneath every layer of the last 4 years she was still my daughter, and there are things that stay true no matter what gets piled on top of them. I love you, I said. I will always love you. But I cannot fix this for you. I can only be here when you are ready to do the work yourself. She stood there in the drizzle with her mouth open and nothing coming out, searching for words that weren't there. For a long stretch, neither of us spoke. The October rain was picking up slightly. I could see her shaking in that dress. Please, Dad, she whispered. I have nowhere else to go. You have more options than you think, I said. I held her eyes. My door will be open when you're ready to come through it as my daughter. Not as someone collecting on a debt. But I cannot carry this for you. Not until you're ready to be honest about the choices you made. She stood there under the porch light. The panic in her face was shifting slowly, reluctantly, into something heavier and more permanent. The weight of a reckoning she hadn't chosen and couldn't redirect. It was the first time in a long time she looked like the girl I remembered. Not because she was all right, but because she was genuinely, profoundly not all right. And she knew it, and for maybe the first time in years, there was no one else to hand it to. I stepped back inside, closed the door, slowly, carefully, without force, because a boundary means nothing at all if you move it the moment things become uncomfortable. Through the sidelight panel, I watched her stand under the porch light for a long moment before she turned and walked back to her car. Her engine started, idled for a few seconds. Then she was gone. I went back to the living room, sat in my chair. Outside, the rain came down on the street in the same patient way it had been coming down all week, the kind of rain that doesn't hurry and doesn't stop. I didn't feel like I'd won. There's nothing to win when your daughter's life comes apart around her, even when she built it on ground that was never solid to begin with. What I did was refuse to be the foundation for someone else's fraud. That was the whole of it, nothing more heroic than that. I don't know if she'll come back through that door. That part is no longer mine to control. But sitting there in the quiet with the rain on the window, my mind was clearer than it had been in a very long time. Sometimes protecting the people you love doesn't mean catching them before they fall. Sometimes it just means being honest about where the ground actually is, and trusting them to find their own way back up. If this story found you tonight, drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you at the next one.